Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and Awooga, what the heck? Share the road.
Well, Jason just summarized the entire film that we're about to discuss. In this season of Awesome Movie Year, we are talking about the films of 1971. And we are here again at our episode on a major debut feature. We just talked about George Lucas's THX 1138. But because this year represents the debuts of two of the most important and influential filmmakers really of all time, who also are, inextricably associated with each other, we decided to do another debut feature episode on Steven Spielberg's Duel. And that's where we're at.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad I did that intro because that fits this movie. So how about that?
Yeah.
Good job.
We
Jason.
really tied it all together there. Both referencing the same movie in this episode on that movie.
You know what we should do is talk about this movie during this episode.
I guess if that's what you want to do, we can give that a try. Duel is the first feature film from Steven Spielberg. He had done some TV episode directing before this, and this actually began as a TV movie. Some would maybe not consider this the first Spielberg feature film because it was not initially a theatrical release. It was a TV movie of the week that aired on ABC. And it was so successful that Universal, the studio behind producing it, decided to have Spielberg expand it slightly. I think it was about 75 minutes to fit in the TV time slot. And he expanded it to 90 minutes for a theatrical release. So it was released theatrically in Europe and Australia, and eventually later in some US theaters. But here, people had already seen it on TV, whereas overseas, it hadn't aired on TV, so it was new in theaters. So kind of a hybrid thing going on. And the version available now that I believe we all watched, and that's the version that streams and releases on home video and whatever, is the longer theatrical cut.
ABC Movie of the Week, 18th highest rated TV movie of the year, got a 20.9 rating with an audience share of 33%.
Which would make it more highly rated than literally anything that airs on TV in the past, 20 years or something, I think.
Yeah,
but
maybe since the Seinfeld finale or something.
I don't know. Maybe the Super Bowl even that probably doesn't get those ratings anymore. But I was amazed that it was the 18th highest rated TV movie of the year, which means there were a lot of TV movies. This was an era in which the TV movie was like a major thing, and all the networks were airing like movies of the week, maybe even multiple times a week.
Right. I mean, again, we're probably at 3 stations at this point, right? CBS, NBC, and ABC. So,
right.
This is how Barry Diller rose to fame as an executive by taking over the movie of the week, and which people are like, yeah, do whatever you want. And he became like a wunderkind executive because of that. And Spielberg, as we know, Josh, the movie that you're referencing that some people would say is his first feature is Sugarland Express. But I think this is his first feature. I'm going to go with this.
Yeah, I would count this. I mean, I think now, of course, we're in an era where the distinction between a TV movie and a theatrical movie basically doesn't exist. But even if you want to argue that distinction, I think the fact that this movie was made for theaters overseas gives it that distinction, and we can count it.
Josh and I were talking earlier this week about our top 10 movie lists from this year, and he is trying to disqualify 2 of my picks, which are TV documentary films, and he says are not films. So,
but not because they're made for TV, but because they're multi-part series.
I know, but I just feel like it's an evolution of the documentary film at this point.
It's not even kind of a film.
Thank you, Dave. This is irrelevant to our discussion, but I appreciate having your support on this. It has nothing to do with whether it was in theaters or on TV. It has to do with it being a multi-part series. which
Listen,
Duel is not.
If Dave agrees with you, then I know I'm right.
All right. So, but I think it is interesting, this whole era, really like the 70s, and I think the 80s too a bit, are the heyday of this TV movie. And these were things that were generally like sort of dismissed and not considered at the same artistic level as theatrical movies. But at the same time, there are a lot of major directors like Steven Spielberg who worked in this format. And I think these movies disappeared for a long time. They weren't typically released on home video or necessarily even aired again on TV. I mean, this is an outlier in that it was expanded for theaters and did get all of that full release. But now a lot of these older TV movies are getting rediscovered. And I've seen some. Wes Craven and John Carpenter, for example, directed TV movies in the 70s, like important filmmakers. And so I think it's an area of film that has been neglected, but was really an important showcase for a lot of filmmakers during this era.
Well, I'm trying to bring it back, but you guys are telling me they're not movies. So what can I do, guys? This did win an Emmy for Best Film Sound Editing, had a nomination for cinematography. I wonder what beat that. And it did have a Golden Globe nomination for Best TV Movie.
It did. And yes, I was looking at that. That is all I had as well for the awards. Yeah, I'm curious about that too, about the cinematography, because this movie is really well shot. I mean, considering that also Spielberg had, compared to a theatrical film, a limited budget and a limited amount of time, even though he was given those extra, but I think it was only like 3 extra days or something for reshoots for the theatrical version, that he accomplishes a lot technically. And there's a lot of creative visuals here for something that had to be made so quickly.
All right, Josh, I got it right here. Duel lost to Brian's Song, one of my mom's favorite movies and a real heartbreaker. If you've never seen that, this is the cinematography award. It's about Brian Piccolo, the football player who dies young. Do you know who stars in Brian's Song?
I don't. I've heard of that, but I haven't seen it.
A young James Caan.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a very well-known film, but I have a hard time imagining the cinematography is better than in Duel.
Yeah, the cinematography is awesome, but Brian's Song pulls on the heartstrings. So my guess is that probably won all the TV, Emmy, Oscar movie things.
Yeah, that's what they're
awards.
Called. Right. Yeah, that does happen. I mean, I know that happens a lot at the Oscars. It's like maybe this movie didn't really have the best technical this or that, but because it's the movie that everyone loved and everyone voted for, it just wins all those awards too.
Josh, have you ever read the Richard Matheson short story in a Playboy magazine based on his 1963 experience that led to him writing this movie? It actually happened to him in 1963. A wild truck driver kept trying to drive him off the road, and he wrote a short story in Playboy, which we all used to read for the articles.
In the 1970s, before we were born.
Yeah. The natural hair on those articles were really interesting.
Okay.
So,
right.
But anyway, this turned into the movie.
Yeah, I have not. I've read some other Richard Matheson stuff. I mean, he's a very well-known horror and genre writer and known for his short stories, stuff that was adapted for The Twilight Zone. And this definitely feels like it could have been an episode of one of those TV anthologies, whether it was The Twilight Zone or Night Gallery, or there were a lot of other ones. And Spielberg was big working on those. That was some of the work he did early in his career. And then, of course, he later on created Amazing Stories, which was very much indebted to all of those things. So as I was watching this, I definitely, I was impressed with the film. But on the other hand, I thought, you know what? If this had been like a 45-minute anthology episode, it might have been a bit more effective because it would have been tighter. It's less repetitive. So I could see that. I haven't read the short story though.
I think the 75-minute is probably the sweet spot, but there was stuff added to the 90-minute that I did think enhanced the character.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think some of the like suspense set pieces that were added for the theatrical version are some of the best things in the movie. And that if you took those out, the 75-minute version would be mostly just the more repetitive things and less of the kind of more interesting detours, so to speak, I think.
Detours because of road, Dave.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like
driving.
Yeah.
Clever. So
Highways.
looking for reviews of this
Cars.
was sort of difficult because, of course, it was initially released only on TV here, and I didn't find. I mean, there were TV critics, of course, in the 1970s, but I didn't find any TV reviews of it. So I've only got one review here, and this is from Janet Maslin in the New York Times in 1983, which I guess was when it was released in theaters in New York. So she said, Duel might almost have been a silent film because it expresses so much through action and so little through the words that are here. Mr. Weaver, Dennis Weaver, is the film's ostensible leading man, but his responses are seldom complex or surprising. The vehicles are the real stars of Duel, and whenever the chase is interrupted by the relatively primitive people on hand, the film loses its momentum and becomes somewhat clumsy. The ending is abrupt, too, but the main impression left by Duel is one of talent and energy. Mr. Spielberg seemed, with this film, to be headed for bigger and better things. Sure enough, he was. And of course, this was only in 83 when he had a lot of bigger and better things still on the way.
Josh, did you read you were a collector of the TV Guide, right? You collected them. You had the
I
whole
didn't
back
collect them.
issues?
I never, I don't think I ever kept them really. I mean, I would read them. I would enjoy reading the articles, and I would scour the TV listings and everything, but I didn't keep them. I think my parents just had a subscription and I would read them when we got them.
Well, I used to just get them for the naked ladies. No, but I mean, it's interesting because you're like, it's tough to source reviews. And I immediately thought of TV Guide, like what a publication of our youth that will never be seen again.
True. It does still exist, but not nearly.
Not in my mind.
Not in the form that it used to. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, and the thing about this, like, I'm not sure if this was something that was provided, if TV movies in general were provided in advance to critics, or a critic would have had to have caught it when it aired and decided it was worth writing about. There may be reviews from publications like TV Guide. My research skills are not always as
good
up to the standards, so I did not locate anything like that, unfortunately. But I mean, it was popular, as you said. It got those award nominations. It got decent ratings. And of course, enough of a response that they wanted to give it that second life in theaters.
What I found interesting on this review was the ending, which is very kind of like artistic and kind of opaque. You could almost line this ending up right next to the ending of THX 1138, and it looks exactly the same in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have the lone character who's out in the empty, open space, wondering like what's next. I suppose that is a connection,
and
in
who's
a way.
Finally, kind of gotten past in both cases, people who are chasing him to run him down.
Mm-hmm. That is true. I don't know if Spielberg, I mean, they were friends, of course. They're famously very close friends. I don't know if they discussed these things with each other when they were making these films. I mean, in later films, they talk a lot about having given each other feedback and advice, but I'm not sure about these.
These guys, USC film brats,
yes.
The leader of the bunch, Francis Ford Coppola. I think John Milius would also be in there. And who am I forgetting? De Palma.
Yeah.
Robert Towne maybe doing some things like that. I don't know.
Could be.
But that's the group. So
that is. Yeah. So, I mean, certainly those two, though, always were bouncing ideas off each other and things like that. I thought it was interesting, too, in that Maslin review elsewhere, she talks about basically, she mentions, it had been a TV movie, and says, like, I don't really see that there are any differences per se, so if she had seen the TV movie like 12 years earlier or whatever, and of course didn't have the chance to watch it again, didn't necessarily remember which things were new and which things had already been in there, which I think shows how seamlessly, and that's got to be tough to make a movie, give you a final cut, say this is the film, and then be told, you have to add 15 minutes to it and to make that stuff fit in.
I'm sure some of it was, I know some of it was the opening sequence where he's kind of just driving along the roads, which gets you into the vibe and you hear the DJs. So that's not bad. There's probably a few on the highway set pieces, but to me, the biggest one that was added was the scene where he calls his wife. And that's the real character development, because she's like, hey, why didn't you stand up for me last night? And we kind of learn that he's just kind of this kind of wet noodle who never stands up for himself. And that is really key to who this character is in fighting off Duel.
Right. I mean, we're going to name the guy Duel. Why not? No, I agree. I thought that scene was key, and it speaks to like larger themes of the film, if you want to look into it that way, that it is about this guy kind of asserting his masculinity. Maybe he was humiliated the night before by some guy hitting on his wife, and then he's extra humiliated by the wife in that phone conversation, and he's seizing on this truck driver as like, here's some, I'm not going to back down. I'm going to stand up for myself in a way that I never have before. So I agree with you that that's a key scene. And I mean, I think there's a couple other scenes here of like suspense. The scene with the school bus was one that was added. And I think that scene is really important because it shows you the way that like other people are not threatened by this truck for the most part, because he's trying to yell at these school children, get out of the road. And there's this crazy truck driver and he's going to run you all over. And oh my God. And then he kind of gets in his car and drives away. And you see the truck doesn't do that. It actually helps the school bus, right? It pushes it back onto the road so that, because it was stalled out. So I thought that was also key to kind of the themes of the film.
Hitchcockian paranoia, if you will, Josh.
Yes, indeed. So, so I mean, but again, just even if you thought those scenes weren't the best scenes in the movie or whatever, I don't think you watch the movie and think, oh, clearly this was added later, or this is some sort of reshoot or anything like that.
I didn't.
I had no idea. So,
all right.
That's how Dave lives his life.
I don't research anything. I just live it.
Totally oblivious, going through life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Jason, had you seen this one before?
I had seen this film before in our late friend Francisco Menendez's class. I took Spielberg and Scorsese in college. That was my first time seeing it. And I remember I really liked it then, and it pretty much held up the same exact way. And we used to have to write like journal entries on all these films. And in our next segment, I still remember one of the questions that I asked about this film that I still question today, Josh.
All right. So Menendez counted this as a Spielberg film.
And I will say Francisco Menendez was one of the, I mean, we've had him on for the trip back in the day, because he's like he was so great as an educator and a film historian. And he really learned a lot in that class. That was a great class.
All right. So, Dave, had you seen this?
I had not. It had always been on my list. Happy to finally get to it.
Yeah, I had not seen it either. It was one of a small number of Spielberg films that I'd never seen. And I too am glad that I checked it out. I feel like for the most part, what I haven't seen are maybe less regarded films of his, but this is definitely not that. And I was glad to check it out. So anything else you want to say about the background of this film, Jason?
Well, Josh, Spielberg, like you said, had been doing TV episodes before, and I think he got this gig based on a Columbo episode that he had directed. And there was an episode of a show, it was called LA 2017 was his first TV directing gig.
So we'll come back and talk more of our general thoughts on Duel. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1971, we are talking about Steven Spielberg's debut feature, Duel. And Jason, you just referenced the class you took on this film and an important question you asked. What was that?
Who goes to the diner and orders a cheese sandwich?
Okay, so a non-important question.
The most important question. I could see ordering a grilled cheese, a ham and cheese, but just a straight up cheese sandwich. I've never seen anyone order that at a diner.
I mean, he's a bit frazzled and distracted. Maybe he thought that was just the simplest thing that wouldn't upset his stomach further if it's in knots over his stress here. What was the answer from the class?
There was no answer, Josh. I think it was one of those befuddling details that people would be like, yes, grilled cheese, I can see that. Raw cheese sandwich? Well, that's a bit That's a bit different, but maybe we've already said this character is a little wishy-washy. Maybe he thought it would be too much to ask for a grilled cheese sandwich.
I think you're right, Jason. And I just wanted to mention, I watched this, a few weeks back before this recording, and I went back to my notes. The only two things I wrote down are cheese sandwich, and I wonder if Jason is going to do his intro via internal monologue. So,
yeah, the internal monologue is certainly the weakest part of this film. And it's not even throughout. If it had been narrated throughout the entirety of it, it might have made a bit more sense. But we only get it very intermittently and mainly in the diner when he stops off and he's in the diner and he's very paranoid. He's looking around at all of these kind of truck driver looking guys sitting there and wondering which one is the driver of the truck that has been following him. And everything that he says in that internal monologue is just very obvious and we don't need it. And I don't know
Stop
if Spielberg
changing subjects. Cheese sandwich.
I don't know if Spielberg didn't trust himself or if that was just, it was in the screenplay and he had to use it, or maybe some executive said, this is a TV movie. We need to be like modern Netflix notes that say the characters always need to say what they're doing because people aren't paying attention to this. Maybe that was, hey, people are eating their TV dinners while they watch this and we need some really clear exposition about what this character is thinking, but it's not necessary. Spielberg is great visually and he gets that all across.
I'll tell you what you wouldn't get in a TV dinner, a cheese sandwich.
Do you have any thoughts on the construction of this scene cinematically, Jason?
Let me tell you how I'd construct a cheese sandwich. No, look, it's on the nose. It's okay because Dennis Weaver pulls off that kind of paranoia very well. But yeah, it's very like overt in that the thing is, I think you could have done it obviously without the internal monologue and just the visuals and him looking and reacting. But to get it to that 90 minutes, they probably needed that, kind of a voiceover. At the same time, they do use it a few other times. I think it's like one of those like, hey, this is just a highway movie and there's not enough dialogue. So we need to, clue the audience in on certain things that we didn't need to clue them in on, like you said. But yeah, not the best aspect of the film. The diner scene really picks up with the fight, which is cool. Like, where he kind of thinks the wrong guy is the truck driver and, it instigates a fight and gets his tuchus whipped, Josh, to use some Fiddler on the Roof terminology there. So, but clearly those are two major problems that we've discovered in the diner.
Yeah, clearly equally important issues with this film. And I think the diner stuff and the voiceover there was from the original shorter cut. So it wasn't added for padding. It was really just for exposition purposes, I guess.
The TV movie stuff, I think, which is interesting if you think about it, because like that's such a nail on the head thing. And the end, which is like this kind of like dreamy artistic montage of Dennis Weaver standing over the defeated Duel and just kind of like the sun beating down on him and everything feels very cinematic as opposed to this. So yeah, it's anachronistic. I think the other stuff, like when he goes and stops at that other roadside stand with the lady with all the exotic animals, like where you're actually seeing it play out without the internal monologue is way more effective.
Yeah, I agree. And there are other moments, I think, in the film where Spielberg does convey something that the character is thinking or a plan he's kind of trying to make, like, oh, I'll go over here, or if I move this way, I can get around this or whatever. And he does that all with the camera without needing the voiceover. So, I mean, it sticks out there because there's so much of it in that one particular scene. And maybe also because there's no action. It's just him sitting and looking versus driving the car where things at least are always in motion and there's something else to look at. I don't know. But yeah, it is disappointing. I like that scene a lot. I actually rewatched that scene last night because, as Dave referenced, we kind of postponed this episode and had all watched this a little while ago. So I was trying to refresh my memory. And that scene with the lady who keeps like rattlesnakes and tarantulas behind her gas station next to her phone booth. What a business that must be.
I mean, Josh, you know me, I do a lot of road trips. Sometimes when you go through Arizona, you pass like weird little roadside stands like that, that are, trying to play off of like, the desert animals, the prehistoric. There's also Arizona, which sounds incredibly frightening. You just drive through a park with a bunch of bears. I just got back from Lake Tahoe and there was literally a bear crossing the street. And I was like, if this bear turns, it will mash this car. So,
oh man.
Yeah. But those are real attractions for people. It's interesting, like, how do you end up in that business? That would be interesting to find out.
Right. Yeah. Let's watch a movie about that lady's whole life. But
that feels like an Errol Morris.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I don't road trip as much, but I used to do that a lot, driving through the desert places, and still occasionally do. I remember going to Quartzsite, Arizona, which is just a bunch of like people selling rocks and stuff. I used to do that with my dad. We would drive to Arizona because he would go to spring training baseball and I would be there also. And stuff like that is pretty fun. But the other thing, what I was going to say I like about that scene is that so much of this movie, you could imagine, especially like the diner scene where he's clearly paranoid, right? He picks a fight with the wrong guy. And even before then, he has these kind of speculations that like, oh, maybe it's this guy or maybe it's this guy. And he's always wrong. And at a certain point in the movie, you might think, is he imagining all this? Is it all just in his head? And when you get to that scene with the lady and the exotic animals, she clearly sees it too, right? The truck runs down her animal cages and her phone booth, and she's running away just like our main character is. So I like that showed like, okay, this is real. This isn't just some guy paranoid in his mind.
Well, also, referencing Hitchcock again, that was another real nod to Hitchcock where like, how do we ratchet up the tension even further? And Duel is driving down and killing, or crashing into the snake cages. So now we have a truck chasing Dennis Weaver and we have venomous snakes that he's got to avoid. Like, it was a really good job of like ratcheting up the tension there. So I thought that was good. We keep talking about Arizona. I know this was shot in California, but this definitely, anywhere southwest, this definitely has that feel. So our landscape, Josh, we're used to this. So if you want to duel, don't duel with Josh. He knows the roads too well.
No, I will lose the duel 100%. But I definitely have driven a lot of these back roads. I mean, not these particular ones. I think this was up more towards Central California and like Sacramento and stuff where they shot this. But I've driven back and forth between here and the Los Angeles area and also the Palm Springs area many, many times and taken some of these back roads, and very, very similar to what they show in this film. And Jason, I know you've done that LA drive a bunch of times too.
Yeah, LA, Arizona, New Mexico. And I actually love it. I mean, it gets tiring. And also all the way through northern, up to Reno and Tahoe. But this feels like that real kind of Southwesty feel. But I like those back roads. I sometimes when I drive back from LA, I'll specifically take those back and I'll end up on like mountain passes where it's like, it feels very duelish. And, it's really fun. I mean, if you've never been out to the West Coast, I love it when people come out like, oh, I'm going to Vegas, I'm going to LA. And then like they always make sure to add like, I'm driving through Arizona or whatever, because you really get that kind of asteroid city feel landscape or dual landscape. Asteroid City was shot in Spain. But you know what I mean? There's like a real like dust-ridden Americana feel to it, little wild, wild west things still going. So when you see these roads, it's pretty cool. Also, I referenced Duel on Dave's episode of Piecing It Together with One Battle After Another, because those high central hills in California that they drive in through Act 3 definitely feels like a nod to this film.
Yeah, I absolutely was thinking of One Battle After Another as well. And those are similar looking roads in similar areas. And you mentioned, Jason, earlier, the opening scene that was added for the theatrical version that's sort of like a POV shot of the protagonist driving out of LA. And it starts on those crowded LA freeways and, all the interchanges and going through tunnels and whatever. And then it gets further and further away from the city out into these empty open roads. And that the POV shot, especially there, is very similar to what Paul Thomas Anderson does in those scenes in One Battle After Another.
What's your go-to soundtrack for driving through the desert?
Well, it's the Piecing It Together podcast, of course.
Oh, there you go.
Dave,
No, I do honestly. Yeah. If I take long drives, that's usually when I listen to podcasts the most. So I'll, download a bunch of podcasts and listen to them on those long drives. Cause especially at some of those desert roads, if they're very empty and straight, they're kind of very monotonous. And so I'd like to have a podcast that I can, you can argue with the podcast sometimes, right?
Nice.
Dave is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Of course, absolutely.
You don't need long road trips to say that, Josh. But I do a lot of podcasts. You might be aware I'm a Bruce Springsteen fan. I go to Darkness on the Edge of Town for this kind of, the promised land. On a rattlesnake speedway in the Utah desert, I pick up my money and head back into town,
Nice.
all that stuff. But we love the road trips, guys. We love the road trips. Josh, here's another question for you. When you see a movie like this, do you think, how would they convert this into something today when you have internet and cell phones, and there are certain things like you could see them trying to remake this, but it kind of fits better with the lack of technology?
Yeah, that's true. Although I feel like you could get around the cell phone thing relatively easily here because
Duel
he's
could
driving.
Smash his cell phone, or he could drop it, or whatever.
Yeah, or also like having driven through these roads, there are long stretches where you get no cell service. Like it's very believable that in these sort of empty spaces that he would not have cell service and he would have to stop somewhere like the roadside diner that might have a cell tower or whatever so that he could use the phone, even if it's not a payphone. I mean, he does use the phone multiple times in this film. He calls his wife at that one point. He tries to use the phone in the snake lady's stop there. And I don't think he doesn't use the phone in the roadside diner. But I mean, it is possible for him to make phone calls. It's just that he can't do that while he's driving. So definitely it makes it easier, but I feel like you could do something like this now and get around it without too much difficulty.
One of the things Spielberg, we always know is he's very meticulous about the details, and the car that Duel was trying to get, the Dennis Weaver car, he said as long as it was red, it didn't really matter which car it was, because that way the car would stand out in wide shots on the desert highway. And of course, one of Spielberg's most famous and emotionally affecting scenes involves the little girl with the red coat in Schindler's List. So it's interesting to make those connections like that and see like how he was building towards, like you said, bigger things all the way back then.
Yeah, I mean, and he's thinking about that visually. And I think that goes to what we were saying about the lack of need for exposition, because he knows how to convey all of the important stuff visually. And he's already got that in mind. So certainly that car does stand out. And especially in contrast to the truck, which is very like brown and dingy and dirty. And the red car, I mean, eventually it gets beat up. But when we start, it's also like clean and shiny. I mean, there's a very clear difference between these two.
Yeah, where'd they get that truck? Radiator Springs, right? Guys?
Oh,
right?
Yeah. So. What if that truck faced Mater? Who would win that duel?
Yeah, or Lightning McQueen. That said about the truck, which was a Peterbilt 281, as you know, Josh.
Of course, I'm a truck expert.
Yes. Spielberg, I mean, what I read is that he chose that truck, round headlights. It looked like a face. So it was like menacing.
Mm-hmm.
And also they put a lot of, and this, what do you think of this? I didn't get this from this, but they put multiple license plates on the front bumper to suggest that the truck driver is a serial killer, having run down other drivers in other states.
I mean, I definitely noticed all the license plates. I was wondering, I feel like that maybe is or used to be a thing where like interstate trucks were able to have license plates from multiple states, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I did notice those plates. I didn't necessarily make the connection of them as like trophies of other victims, but it makes sense. And I think either way, it's another thing where you're like, why does this truck have all these license plates? Like that makes it kind of weird and set apart from everything else.
Or whatever, right? It keeps you off balance
a
little there.
Yeah.
So, the other thing that we kind of mentioned here is the cinematography, which obviously it's Spielberg. We know he's a beautiful filmmaker. I really think the use of landscape was awesome, and the use of building tension. Those are probably the two real standouts of this movie for me.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly when this movie started, I was thinking like, how is this going to be sustained for 90 minutes? And I did feel at times that it got a little tedious or repetitive, but I think it could have been much, much more so in the hands of a different filmmaker, that Spielberg finds great ways not only to break up the story narratively with the stops, that's, I mean, presumably in the screenplay, but also ways to present the same thing in a different visual approach, so that you're not just watching the same two shots over and over again, for example, as we deal with the same situation over and over again. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is the kind of thing that the material is simple, it's minimalist, and another filmmaker might have struggled to keep the audience's interest.
What was he? Probably like 23, 24 at the time.
I think a little
24, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Just good stuff all the way around. Movie was shot in 13 days. Not easy to do, I mean, because you have to, there was a 3-day overrun and a 10-day edit, right? So you literally made this thing beginning to end in less than a month, obviously pre-pro before that. But like, it's not easy to plan this out. It's almost like planning out a dance sequence, right? I mean, or like John Wick, right? Stahelski, those action sequences. This is basically like a highway kind of dance the whole time. So I just think expertly crafted, and this kid's going places.
Yes, he is. So,
Josh,
yes.
I wanted to say one other thing. Dennis Weaver, really solid lead here.
I was actually just going to say we should talk about Dennis Weaver's performance. And he's not someone I'm particularly familiar with. And he was a TV actor, like very prolific TV actor who did TV shows and tons of TV movies. And because this was a TV movie, presumably the pool of actors available was not, you couldn't get Robert Duvall, for example, to go back to THX because he's a theatrical film guy, right? So you have to get a TV actor. But he does a very good job. I think he conveys, he has to convey a lot without dialogue, with just his looks and his body language, and he does that well. But the scenes also where he interacts, like we were talking about the scene of him on the phone with his wife, he gives you the sense of that character with just a handful of details. So we understand kind of where he's coming from. So, yeah, I mean, would this have been more impressive with an A-list kind of star? I don't know, maybe, but he does a good job here.
Yeah, I think Spielberg fell in love with him for his work in Touch of Evil. And, again, we're connecting the film history of Orson Welles to Spielberg. So he does do a good job. I mean, he's the only real character in the movie. We see the wife for a second, or, one of those cowboys or the diner owner, the snake lady. But it's his movie and Duel's movie.
Yeah, and we only see like the arm of the truck driver. So we do get that. So you don't, because I feel like also there's another thing that you might speculate, like, is this truck some sort of like sentient monster or whatever? But we do get a couple moments where you see that there is a person there inside the truck, even though we don't see the person's face.
Did you feel satisfied, or did you want to see the person at the end?
No, I didn't want to see the person. In fact, I would have been happier to never see even that arm, or in the very final scene, we actually get inside the truck and you see the driver's hand like shifting gears as he's trying to like avoid driving off that cliff. I would have been happy to leave it totally ambiguous and not even know, because to me, Matheson is a huge influence on Stephen King, and this felt very Stephen King to me. So I would have been happy without that, but I was fine with what he offered. So were you frustrated with that?
No, not at all. I mean, I usually like, kind of loose ends tied up, but I don't really think you needed it on this one.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to see Duel Origins where we learn about the truck driver and where he got his truck and why he likes to run people down on the road. I mean, that's what we would have now, and that would have been very, very bad.
Good pitch.
No.
Should we rate this thing, Josh?
Well, I mean, Dave, did you have any other thoughts besides the sandwich?
Oh, yeah. No, I love this movie. And one thing that I kept thinking about is we just had the, I think it was 45th anniversary of Jaws, and they put it in...
it's the 50th anniversary.
Was it 50th?
Of Jaws.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they put it in 4DX. I'd love to see this movie in 4DX.
It'd be fun to do that.
Yeah, lots of jostling.
Yes.
What if
going on
you
here.
could, maybe we need to create like a tour where you can just actually drive the roads while we're showing it on the screen.
People are going to that one battle after another road pretty soon. Any day.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
let's
so.
treating it like a roller coaster or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jason, you want to rate this out of five monster evil trucks?
Yeah, sure. 5 evil trucks. Josh, I looked up my Letterboxd at Go for Jason and I gave it 3. And I'm going to say no go for Jason. It's 3.5. It's 3.5 monster trucks from me.
All right. I still will give it 3 monster trucks. I did get a little bored at times in the middle, but I think it's a very, very worthwhile movie and certainly like a key thing to watch if you're interested in Spielberg's career. So a positive though, positive 3 from me. Dave, how do you rate this?
I'm going with 4. I might have been at
All right.
3.5, but I think that it's such an impressive debut that like it gets that little extra bump.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. So we'll come back and talk about the legacy of Duel. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1971, we are talking about Steven Spielberg's debut film, Duel. And legacy-wise, I mean, the immediate legacy for this film, of course, was its expansion into this theatrical version that put it in front of a much wider audience than would have maybe happened to just tune in to the TV broadcast on whatever random night it aired, and I think gave it this longer shelf life than a lot of other TV movies from this era, whether they're directed by major filmmakers or not. I mean, for example, Spielberg did do 2 more TV movies in this sort of phase of his career before he started with theatrical features, Something Evil and Savage, and no one has seen those.
I don't know. I didn't even know those. And I took a class.
Right. That was Francisco Menendez did not bring those up, did he?
What the heck?
Yeah.
Something Evil and Savage. Now I got more movies to watch. So.
But I mean, looking through Letterboxd, like, they're not really available to watch any. I mean, sure, you can find bootleg versions or whatever. Probably somebody's recording from when they aired on TV, but they don't seem to be particularly good. So, he didn't have the chance to be as creative with those maybe as he did with Duel.
Spielberg said, I watch this movie at least twice a year to remember what I did, which is pretty cool. And Denis Villeneuve, in the most Denis Villeneuve quote of all
Just
time,
keep trying there.
Says, this movie felt like home to me. And as the credits rolled, I knew that was the way I wanted to live my life.
He wants to live his life like the character. I assume he means like a filmmaker.
Yeah,
but
I think so too.
Yeah. I could, what, if they were going to remake Duel, I could see Denis Villeneuve being the director of the Duel remake.
That's what I said. So.
The guy who made Dune and Arrival and Sicario, for those of you who wonder about the pronunciation.
I mean, isn't Dune almost, the sandworm chases not too far off in the crazy desert landscape?
Yeah.
Josh, tell me about Throttle, made in 2005, the spin-off sequel.
It's not.
Throttle.
Really. I was curious about this. I think Wikipedia maybe claims that it's a spin-off, but it is not. Basically, it's a completely unrelated thriller about like somebody being chased by a car or a dangerous truck, and they have like a cameo from a guy who drives the same car as the guy in Duel. I mean, it's not Dennis Weaver.
Same character name.
Is no name. It's no name. I don't think the character even has a name. It's just guy with red car. So I think that's like it's an homage. It's a reference. It's not an actual sequel in any way.
AKA American Psycho 3.
Yeah. Not even official in any way like American Psycho 2. But no, Throttle, the 2005 movie, is not the only thing titled Throttle that is a tribute to this, because Stephen King and his son Joe Hill also wrote a novella called Throttle in 2009 that was published alongside a reprint of the original Duel short story as a tribute to Duel.
And of course, talking about Playboy, if you ever read the letters in Penthouse Forum, lots of throttling going on.
Yeah, okay. That's good to know. But like I said, this to me, as a Stephen King fan, reminded me so much of Stephen King material and the kind of thing that he would do. It made me think Spielberg would do a great job with a Stephen King adaptation. And I'm almost surprised that he's never done that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Dennis Weaver, as you said, Josh, prolific TV actor. Gunsmoke and McCloud, probably the two biggest things. Gunsmoke, Josh.
Yes.
Gunsmoke.
Yeah. He was still on McCloud like while he was making Duel and continued on that series after Duel came out. And he was just absolutely like a king of TV movies, just like dozens of those from the 70s through the 90s, including starring in a TV movie remake of High Noon, which I never knew existed. And he was
Another
on TV.
TV movie to put on our list.
Yeah, probably not. But he was on TV all the way through 2005 on the teen drama Wildfire. Did you watch that one?
No, but 2005, also the year of Throttle.
Oh, yeah. We're quite a year for things related to Duel.
Hey, Josh, we've talked about Weaver's stunt driver Dale Van Sickle before. Do you remember when?
I don't. Please tell me.
He was Frankenstein's monster in Hell's a Poppin'. He was also, he was also in Duck Soup, Spartacus, The Searchers, North by Northwest, and as I might have mentioned on that episode, he was in the first team All-American for the Florida Gators football program. Dale Van Sickle.
What a guy, man. That is an impressively eclectic list of credits for that guy. Way to go.
He did it.
So he's the stunt driver who
he did all for Weaver.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, I mean, we've talked about Spielberg's career a couple times before, and I check out our episodes on Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And you can see the influence on Jaws and Jurassic Park, especially. I think his kind of the two like monster movies that he's made. You can see the influence here. His next film is a UFO movie of some kind starring Emily Blunt, Josh O'Connor, and Colin Firth. There's not a lot of detail about that movie, but it's supposed to come out next year.
I got 4 projects upcoming for him. First of all, he does have the record for most Best Picture noms. He's got 13 of those. 1 pick and director for Schindler's List and director for Saving Private Ryan. So you would think he would have more, but that's okay. The 4 projects I listed, which are either theatrical films or TV limited series, which are, of course, movies now. There's one about Gershwin. There's one about Napoleon. He's doing a remake of Bullet, supposedly. So talking about cool car chases, that leads right up to here. And one on Ulysses S. Grant. Of all the 18th presidents of the U.S., he's my favorite.
Yeah, I don't know if any of those. Spielberg is also one of those directors who always has a lot of things in the works that don't necessarily come to fruition. So I don't know if we'll see any of those. That UFO movie I think is in like post-production now. So that at least will definitely happen. But, you know, he remains very prolific and very active, you know, as he's gotten older and making movies that are still hits, that are still highly acclaimed. You know, just recently, I know, Jason, you loved his version of West Side Story. I thought The Fabelmans was really good. So, I mean, still a very vital filmmaker, you know, this far into his career.
You got any Spielberg under the radar Rex or highway road movie Rex, Josh?
You know, I don't know that anything is under the radar with Spielberg. I feel like maybe those TV movies that I mentioned from the 70s that nobody's watched, that I have not watched either, but
I'm going to say Catch Me If You Can. You don't usually think about that one as much as some of the others. I would say that one.
Yeah, that is a fun one. Bridge of Spies maybe is a little under the radar. I thought was an effective kind of spy thriller. Dave, you have something?
I mean, when we covered War of the Worlds, I rewatched his War of the Worlds. It's so good. It freaking rules.
Yeah.
Also, on a separate note, I wanted to mention a little movie called Delivery Run that I watched at FilmQuest last year, which is literally just Duel in the snow with a snowplow. And
that sounds awesome.
It was really fun. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
How can people watch that, Dave?
I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I have no idea.
I think it's actually coming out on VOD right around the time of this episode because I've gotten press releases about it.
There you go. Yeah,
I think it's timely. Yeah. The one thing I thought of, and this isn't like a road movie, but an evil car movie, and going back to Stephen King, is John Carpenter's film of Christine, the Stephen King novel, which I think is really good and is an underrated John Carpenter movie and has a red car. They did like the red car in Duel is the hero, but the red car in Christine is the villain.
Red.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've covered a lot of road movies, Josh. We've covered Bonnie and Clyde and Sullivan's Travels. So I'll recommend something a little different. I mean, a lot of them are and we've covered Blues Brothers. There's a lot of good comedy ones like Midnight Run, and stuff like that. We've covered Easy Rider, but I'm going to go with Terrence Malick's Badlands. I love that movie.
That is a great movie. Yeah, much less action maybe in that movie, but
I mean, it's effing awesome, bro.
it is. No, it's a great
is.
movie. I agree. I'm not trying to say anything negative about Badlands. I do love that film. So that is Duel, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can chase us down online and on social media.
Yes, you can. You can scorn me at Go for Jason on Letterboxd for only giving this 3 stars there. I'm at Jason Harris Comedy or J Harris Comedy on all the things. Also, check out the Trivia Party if you want to know what's going on with all of our trivia nights around town. We're at awesomemovieyear.com, Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and the Gram. And Josh, I turn it over to you.
You can find some old stuff from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I'm at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you watch this movie or any of the movies we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year. We would love to know what you think. And check out our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at PiecingPod.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Let me tell you what's in our next episode. We're into spooky season. Woo! A very special Halloween episode of Awesome Movie Year featuring 1971's A Bay of Blood.
So tune in next time for A Bay of Blood, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, we have another episode coming right up here, Josh. Woo, baby. Am I doing the Halloween tease here? What am I doing?
We're literally recording it in like 5
I know,
minutes.
but is it like a thing? So
Yeah, that's the next episode. Yes.